when a club sells a player for a significant amount of money, it can give them an opportunity to take one step backwards but two steps forwards. You lose your best player, one of your best players, but you can, with the correct scouting, with the correct purchases, actually improve as a squad and be better for that loss. And so once you're over the initial disappointment of losing such a significant player, you can improve. In long term, it works out better for the club. More often than not, I don't think that is the case. Tottenham are a good example where they have not spent the money wisely when selling players for big sums. Aston Villa with the Jack Grealish money, I would suggest initially on paper it looked like good business, but I don't think it worked out for them, certainly not immediately. Liverpool are an example of when it does go correct. They sold Coutinho, and that was probably the catalyst for Jurgen Klopp's reign, because with that money they brought in Alisson, they brought in Van Dijk, they improved. So they lost their best player, but they were able to improve and move forward better as a team for it. Going into this summer, one of my biggest worries was what are West Ham going to do with the sale of Declan Rice? How do we replace Declan Rice? Because it was impossible. Myself, many subscribers of Hammers Chat felt you can't go get one player. There's not one player we can go and get to replace Declan Rice. We'd have to get in two. Then going into the summer, David Moyes said the same thing. He said you can't replace Declan Rice. He's a superstar. We cannot do that. We're going to have to get in more than one player. But prior to the arrivals, I was very nervous, perhaps naively so, that I was worried. How are we going to get on without our best player this season? But at the time, it was next season. How are we going to cope with the loss of our best player, the loss of our captain? And I loved Declan Rice when he was at West Ham, just because he plays for Arsenal. That doesn't change my opinion. But I was worried as to what we were going to do, because there was some games last season I felt he was the best player on the pitch, regardless of who we were playing. He was the best player on the pitch. There were some games he would grab the game by the scruff of the neck and make things happen for us. Now that make things happen can be subjective. It doesn't necessarily mean scoring goals, but he would drive the team on. He was an inspiration, and I was a bit worried as to how we were going to cope, because I didn't necessarily trust, I didn't trust the club to get it right. Despite plenty noticed that Declan Rice was going to leave this summer, the Sebastian Haller thing was worrying me, that we had 18 months to identify a striker. Got in Scamacca and it didn't work out. So I struggled to have faith that we were going to adequately replace Declan Rice. Now the arrival of Edson Alvarez was the one that made me think, here we go, this is a significant signing. The Ward-Prowse one felt obvious, and it felt like it was inevitably he was going to work out under David Moyes. It's a David Moyes type player. But the Alvarez one as well, I thought, okay, here we go. Now we've got two really good midfielders coming in to replace Declan Rice, and this is what I was hoping for. But I was still a little bit worried. I was still a bit worried as to how we were going to function without Declan in midfield. Now, we're only 4 games in, so I don't know how I've titled the video, don't know how Charlie's done the thumbnail, but it'll be along the lines of, we're not missing Declan Rice. West Ham are not missing Declan Rice yet. We may do. There will be games this season where we don't win, we lose or we draw, where after the match I will feel if we had Declan Rice we might have done a bit better in that game. And it's natural to feel like that because he's a world-class player. Again, just because he plays for Arsenal, it doesn't change my opinion of him. I've described him as world-class for a couple of seasons now, and just because he's gone there, and just because the videos are getting a little bit much and I don't really like them, it doesn't mean I don't think he's world-class. It just means I'm just a bit fed up of seeing everything that's happening at Arsenal. That is all. So he is a world-class player. So we will miss him some games. But the question isn't, will we miss Declan Rice? Because I think the answer is yes, at times we will. The question is, will we be better for the sale of Declan Rice? Has West Ham moved forward? Now, 4 games is not enough evidence. We won't really know until, I suppose, the end of the season. I think halfway through the season is a fair point where you will have enough data, you will have enough games where you can look and start to really evaluate whether we're missing Declan or not. But for now, I've been very, very impressed by what I've seen. I was quite confident Alvarez would be a good signing. I was quite confident Ward-Prowse would be a good signing. I was confident Paqueta would do well. But I was a little bit worried about Paqueta because I think the Rice and Souček partnership actually allowed Paqueta to flourish. So how quickly could Alvarez and Ward-Prowse strike one up? Would David Moyes drop Thomas Souček? We have to wait and see. We don't know that answer yet. The answer at the minute is no, because he pushed Paqueta out to the left in order to keep Souček in midfield. The next game, obviously, against Luton, Souček was out. He was unavailable due to his concussion. So it forced Moyes' hand a little bit, and I really liked what I saw, and I'm hoping that game would give Moyes enough to say, actually, Souček can sit out the next one. there will be games we need Souček. This isn't a campaign. This isn't an anti-Souček campaign. I think he's a good player, and I think he's going to have a good season. I think he will. If any player in this squad does better without Declan Rice, it's probably going to be Thomas Souček. He will be the one that benefits the most. And he's different. He's different to Alvarez. He's different to Ward-Prowse. He's different to Paqueta. And there will be some games we will need Souček. There will be a few previews we do. Myself and Gonzo, we're actually in the starting 11. I'd like to see Souček may be in it because of what he brings. And certainly, worst case scenario is on the bench. He's going to be a fantastic asset to bring on. Whether we're protecting a lead, he's a great midfielder. As we've seen in the last 20 minutes against Chelsea, he was superb for that 20 minutes. But we need a goal, and we're getting a little bit long ball crossed into the box. We know what he can do in the opposition box as well. So he's a good asset to have around the team. Just signed a new contract as well, so if that was part of the issue, that's been resolved. So Souček's now almost got no reason not to be good at West Ham now. So we'll wait and see. But the makeup of the midfield, Alvarez, Ward-Prowse, Paqueta. Now it was only Luton, but I liked it. But I also liked what I've seen against Brighton when Souček went off with his injuries. The second half, while they were together on the pitch, I liked what I've seen in that game as well. And in fairness, against Bournemouth, while Alvarez wasn't there, what we seen in that game, we didn't have James Ward-Prowse either, but the midfield function with Paqueta and Fornals and Souček in there. Then against Chelsea, when James Ward-Prowse was available, I liked it. In all 4 games, we've had a different combination starting the match every game, but I've liked what I've seen. So far, no, we don't miss him. But the one thing I suppose I've been a bit naive about is the midfield will actually be better without Declan Rice. Because are any of our 3 players as good as Declan Rice? I mean, I would suggest that Paqueta's not far off being world class, but he would get into any Premier League midfield. Man City, he would get in that midfield. Liverpool, he'd get into that midfield. I think Paqueta could play for any team in the Premier League. But I think individually at what they do, I think Rice is probably better than what we've got. But together, we can move forward better. Because there's always been this suspicion, and I say suspicion, it's Moyes has admitted it. Moyes has basically admitted it a couple of seasons ago that Souček's role was changed to accommodate Declan Rice, and that maybe we bowed down a little bit too much so that Rice would stay. It was a case of we've got this player here, he has special talent, so we're going to give him what he wants. Declan Rice wanted to start moving forward with the ball more. Declan Rice wanted to add that sort of offensive side to his game, and that we West Ham accommodate it. Moyes accommodated it, which I understand why. If Declan Rice had gone to David Moyes and said, I want to get forward a little bit more, I understand why Moyes just said, okay, well, because, and at the time we didn't have Paqueta, he just said, okay, you're the one world-class player we've got at this club. And usually, I say usually, if your world-class player is an attacking player, like Dimitri Payet under Slaven Bilic, that will yield goals. That will then turn into results. If you build your team around your world-class player and it happens to be an attacker, that will probably equate to points on the board, and therefore it justifies what you've done. Like Aston Villa did with Jack Grealish, like we did with Dimitri Payet. And I have no issue with that. Quite often when the Bilic reign comes up and someone will use it as a criticism of Slaven Bilic, say he was only good because of Dimitri Payet, I think, well, hang on. Surely that's a good thing. If Bilic has identified that he's got a really good player there with Dimitri Payet, and he's built his team around to get the best out of Dimitri Payet, and we have got the best out of Dimitri Payet, surely that's good management. That's how I seen it anyway, and we benefited from Dimitri Payet being world class in that 18 months he was with us. But Declan Rice wasn't that attacking player. He didn't contribute those goals in that. So we were building our team around a world-class defensive midfielder. Let's be honest, because that's his role at Arsenal. He's got that box-to-box aspect about him now. But at the time when Moyes accommodated him, he didn't. That was us accommodating. We were adding that to his game, allowing him to get forward. And he was world-class at what he did, but in defensive midfield. And eventually adding that box-to-box part. So to benefit from that, it's probably very, very difficult to do. And you look at Arteta made Declan Rice priority. He wanted to, and it was a case of, it got worded that Arteta wants to build his midfield around Declan Rice. And he sort of has. I've seen a lot of Arsenal so far this season, unfortunately. But while he sort of has, he's brought Declan Rice in to get the best out of his other 2 midfielders, in Martin Odegaard and Kai Havertz. Now, Havertz is a bit of a meme so far, isn't he? But Rice was brought in to use those 2 as the midfield for Arsenal. So he's almost like brought in to do what he used to do at West Ham, but he has that. He's been getting forward for Arsenal a little bit here and there, and naturally you will do when you have that much possession. When you attack that aggressively, your deepest line midfielder will naturally have room to get up to the pitch. But that suspicion, that fear, that thing which has Declan Rice been holding us back so far, I think he's been holding the midfield back, perhaps, and we will, like I said, there's only 4 games, there's not loads of evidence, but something feels different. Maybe it's just me. Actually, I know it's not just me, because when I read the comments from our subscribers, in the match reviews in particular, the phrases are quite common now. The subscribers are saying the same thing, which is there's more balance in our midfield, there's more togetherness in our team. And when everybody's saying it, they can't all be wrong. That's what I say. We're not football experts. Me and you, well, some of you might be, but me and you, we're not football experts. We're football fans. We just have an opinion. Football experts are those in the job. That is David Moyes. That is Declan Rice. They're the experts at football. We're just opinionated people. But we're just football fans. That is it. But my sort of rule of thumb is when all the same football fans are saying the same thing collectively, I don't think you can ignore that. I don't think you can. There's got to be something there. So when I feel there's a large portion of our subscribers saying the same thing in regards to the midfield, there's got to be something there. And I agree with them. I do think the midfield looks a lot better for it. Now, my worry is what happens when one of them get injured. What happens when Alvarez gets injured? What do we do then? Naturally, Souček will come in, but he's nothing like Alvarez. What Alvarez does in possession, that build up to the first goal against Luton, the way Alvarez did 2 1-2s, then just gave it to Paqueta, outstanding play. Souček can't do that. Souček won't do that. He doesn't have the vision, he doesn't have the movement, he doesn't have the composure to do what Alvarez did. Souček can't do it. So Souček can maybe replace Alvarez's defensive part of the game in some respects, but can't do the other part. So we'd miss Alvarez. If Ward-Prowse gets injured, and we've had the scare, we've already had the scare. Ward-Prowse had picked up a knock, he's had a scan, he's no longer in training, he comes back on Monday. So it's expected that he's fine for Man City. It's not a serious knock, but he got a knock. And I'll tell you what, I bet I wasn't the only one that when I seen that he's had a knock and got a scan, I thought, oh no, leave this out please, because if Ward-Prowse gets injured, that midfield will struggle. It would be different. Alvarez, Souček, Paqueta is completely different. Again, Souček can go in and do a job, but in possession he's nothing like what James Ward-Prowse is. And then obviously naturally there's Paqueta. Now funnily enough, I think Paqueta is the one that we could probably replace easier with Pablo Fornals. We could probably put Fornals in there, and we'd miss Paqueta, sure we would, but where we lose out in Paqueta's flair and vision, I think you might gain something else with Fornals in regards to work rate and pressing and being better defensively. Now, like I said, Paqueta is good defensively, but I've also seen moments where Paqueta's walking about and also lying overreacting. Paqueta overreacts a lot. It's not something you attribute to Fornals. But I like what I've seen so far. I've been really, really impressed. Like I said, I was really nervous. I was very happy with the signings individually, but there was still a worry. There was still a let's see how we get on without Declan Rice. But I have been very, very impressed. And actually, to change the midfield, it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And this is why Liverpool deserve a lot of credit for their start to the season, because they've ripped up their midfield and started again. They've got 3 new midfielders starting, and they've just hit the ground running, all 3 of them, individually, as a partnership, and you wouldn't tell that's a new midfield 3. And that's an incredibly hard thing to do. And West Ham have done their version of it. Only 2, with Rice and Souček essentially coming out of the team, and Alvarez and Ward-Prowse going in. And like I said, it's little evidence. There's not enough games yet. But what we have seen, I've been very, very impressed. And that is not an easy thing to do, to change the heartbeat of your team. And that's what we've done. We've changed captain. We've changed the guy that was responsible for going and getting the ball from the back 4. Whenever the defence had the ball, where is Declan Rice? And I think that's why we're moving the ball better. That's why I think in counter-attacks, our transitions, against Brighton especially, have been better. They've been quicker. Declan would take 2 or 3 touches. Actually, Ward-Prowse and Alvarez are taking 1 or 2. We are quicker at moving the ball this season, I feel anyway. This is statistically, I don't know. I'll save that for Jack over in Hammerley Takes. But for myself, from what I've watched, I feel we are quicker. I feel like we're more direct. Doesn't necessarily mean longer. The ball isn't going isn't getting booted 80 yards or anything. It's just that instead of that 3-4 touches or slowing the game down, we're not doing that at the minute. We are quite happy with a quick tempo when we win possession back in our defensive third. We're moving the ball quick, and I like it. And actually, it's got me feeling quite excited for what else can come. There is a hesitation and there is a worry, because that is, what if one of these pick up an injury? We've got the European campaign to come round, and this is where part of me thinks we could have done with keeping Flynn Downs. I think we could have perhaps retained him, especially when you look at the squad. Like I said, if Alvarez comes out, who goes in? Flynn Downs would have been ideal. But for now, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And for now, are West Ham missing Declan Rice? No. But I do think we will. However, as long as there's the most games, as long as 70% of fixtures this season, the answer is no. And I think we've done well. And while not every club will take 1 step backwards and 2 steps forward, so far, it looks like West Ham can do that. Despite losing Declan Rice, together we can be better for it. I'm quite excited. Anyway, if you enjoyed this rambling, please do drop a like on it. Subscribe to Hammers Chat. Catch up in a bit.